What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Redriveraviation. Hope you're having a fantastic day today, and today I have a very exciting video for you all. Today we're going to be starting a brand new mini video series inside of the trip home from Indianapolis, and this is going to be titled, Will I Make My Connection Part 1? I really hope all of you are looking forward to today's video, as today we have some really explaining to do as of to what's going on here. This was certainly a very gutsy itinerary here, and today throughout this video series we're going to find out what happened. So I hope all of you are looking forward to this, and without any further delay, let's go ahead and get started. So long story short, if you haven't been keeping up with the Indianapolis trip that I've been posting on my channel recently, I needed the way to get home from Indianapolis back home to Tulsa, of course, and what ended up happening there was all the tickets were fairly expensive on this Monday. It ended up being like at minimum at $225, which is fairly high, and I was like, man, maybe I could look around and see if I could get some exciting offerings for a fraction of that price if I did some low-cost carriers. So that's exactly what happened. So what I ended up settling on for about the same price, a little bit more, was Spirit Airlines from Indianapolis to Orlando, and then Frontier Airlines from Orlando to New Orleans, followed by Southwest Airlines from New Orleans to St. Louis to Tulsa. So I thought getting all of that value for the same price was too good to pass up, despite the low-cost carriers. And there's a few more factors that go into how I structured it the way that I did. So we'll talk about those as we speak. So it was just crazy to get that for the same price. So I thought it was too good to pass up. So as you all may know, in the summer months, or closing in on the summer months, Orlando has plenty of thunderstorms, and with low-cost carriers, this was a little bit concerning, obviously, as there was a potential for severe weather, and as a result, I definitely needed some additional buffer room on both sides of the Orlando excursion if I were to do this all in one day. So that's how this ended up being structured. So let me give you some time so that this makes a little bit more sense for what I was planning on and how this was structured from my perspective going into this. So I decided to do Indianapolis to Orlando, which I believe was from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. So that all worked itself out perfectly fine. And then I gave a nice window if we weren't able to make it into Orlando within a reasonable amount of time. So I had Frontier from Orlando to New Orleans, and that flight was departing Orlando at 4 p.m. So that, as you can tell, a 4-hour layover, certainly plenty of time to be able to get in there no matter what the case was with thunderstorms. Typically, they developed in the afternoon anyways, as we'll explore later in this video. So I thought that would be plenty of time there to make that connection. So the Frontier flight, like I was talking about, it was scheduled to depart at 4:11 p.m. and then arrive into New Orleans at 5:11 p.m. I also gave buffer room on the other side of this layover as well. It's over 2 hours with the hopes that there would be plenty of time to be able to make my next flight, which was that New Orleans to St. Louis leg that I was telling you all about, and that was on Southwest. So that went from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. and then followed up by St. Louis to Tulsa, getting 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. because obviously with the hub and spoke model, a little less buffer is more than acceptable, and that was all on one itinerary and so on. So all of that for the same price of what we would have been able to get any other one-stop connection on any of the legacy carriers. So I thought that was all certainly definitely worth the deal, and it certainly ended up going really well. So with all this structure now we can talk about the first part of this, Will I Make My Connection Part 1, which is kind of hinting at making that connection in Orlando. So this will be the longest video of this part series. This is the longest layover. So here's what happened, and feel free to check out my trip reports if you'd like to put it together a little bit more, and also the Orlando plane spotting video as well. Okay, so May 22nd, 2023, all is well. It's a sunny day in Indianapolis, and we take Spirit in the big front seat, which great trip report. I can't recommend checking that one out enough. On time, yay for on time, from Indianapolis to Orlando, and I believe we got in there maybe 20 minutes earlier, so it certainly ended up going very well. So I certainly was pleased. I have 11:27 here, but we left at 9:30, so maybe my times were a little bit off, but anyways, get in there with plenty of time to spare, to say the least. So all is well, and obviously my flight's not leaving for a while, so I have plenty of time to do some supplemental plane spotting. So that's what I did. I got some lunch at Orlando, and we arrived into Terminal 1, which I strategically planned this because I knew I wasn't going to have anywhere I could go outside within a reasonable amount of time before I'd have to get back in the security line. Please do keep in mind that I also did not have TSA pre-check at this time. If I would have, I definitely would have explored going out to the parking garage and doing spotting out there. But with no TSA pre-check and so on, especially considering we're in the low-cost terminal, unfortunately, I couldn't go out there and just plane spot. So I stayed within Terminal 1, which is where Spirit and Frontier park at Orlando, and I did plane spotting from there following lunch. So I had lunch for about 30 minutes, and then you got the plane spotting, and that full video is out on my channel if you'd like to check it out. We caught some really cool planes, including a variety of special liveries and also some wide body bodies, silver ATRs, and so many cool planes. So that went really well. So here we go. So plane spotting for the normal 2 hours that I was expecting. So I'm like, all right, pretty cool. This is all going well. And as such, obviously, I knew the forecast going into all this, and there was supposed to be afternoon thunderstorms in Orlando around the 3 to 5 range. So I was like, hopefully they kind of stay off the airport and our plane can make it in. So our plane's making a very long flight in from Grand Rapids, Michigan. I think it came in at like 3.5 hours. And our plane's already behind a little bit. I think it was behind maybe 45 minutes or so. And I was like, not too big of a deal because it can make that up and be here within a reasonable amount of time. So as time goes on, here comes the plane and here come the thunderstorms to Orlando International Airport with it. So I'm like, oh boy, here we go. So then the thunderstorms end up arriving, and I'll definitely show some pictures of what that was looking like. And unfortunately, the storms came right for the airport, and they absolutely demolished Orlando International Airport on this day. And I knew this was possible, so that's why I scheduled all this buffer time in the layovers. So our plane goes into a hold, probably, in that Tallahassee area or way off. So I was like, all right, well, we just waited out as I predicted because I scheduled plenty of additional room. Also keep in mind the arrival time at New Orleans was scheduled for 5:11 p.m. and typically those flights, if on time, arrive 30 minutes earlier. So I thought that would be more than enough time to make a connection there with that airport setup. So anyways, thunderstorms roll in, sit for about 30 minutes, heavy rain, all the rest of it, and our plane's in a hold. So I'm like, all right, what can you do about it? And then the airport gets completely backed up at Orlando, and our plane did not make it in the initial round to come land at Orlando. So our plane is still in a hold despite aircraft coming in after the rain has passed. So I'm like, all right, wonderful at this point. So this is when we were in the ground stop after plane spotting, which again, feel free to check out that video. We caught so many cool planes, Aeromexico specials, Southwest specials, among others, JetBlue specials, British Airways 777, so many cool planes. Azul special livery too. But anyway, getting back to the point. So during the ground stop, I was like, man, we unfortunately are going to have severe issues because I was starting to observe my original Southwest flight, which once again was leaving at 7, boarding 6:30, the rest of it. And so I'm like, well, we got massive problems at this point because we were starting to get to the point we were like 30 minutes after the scheduled departure time and our plane was still in the hold. So I said, okay, we need to start exploring other options. So of course, at this point, I started exploring hotel options, which I did my best with what I could. Obviously not 21 years old. So I started looking for qualifying hotels around the area for even a decent price, $150, $200, whatever it was going to be. So I started looking around, and during that process, I also booked an American Airlines return flight on miles. I didn't have much confidence in this option though, but it would have been better than not having any option to get home. My Frontier ticket, of course, was non-refundable, but at this point, it was going to cost much less if I could find a way somehow to make it home. So I found a decent day of American mile redemption, probably 20,000 or some number like that. I would have to go get an email. If I get a chance, I will for you all. But nevertheless, I got a redemption, and that plane I knew was probably going to get delayed inbound, and then I went to go find the plane as soon as I made the booking, and rightfully so, it was already 30 minutes behind, and it was a very tight layover at DFW. So I'm like, all right, well, we'll just do what we can at this point, of course, right? So let's see, where are we in this part of the story? Okay, so I looked around at hotels and I was like, you know what? I'm probably going to be better off if I could make it to New Orleans and get a hotel there, and I'd probably do better on airfare anyway and not forfeit my Frontier ticket. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go on to New Orleans no matter what if this flight doesn't get canceled, right? So here we go for the plane. It finally arrives 3.5 hours delayed in from Grand Rapids. It finally gets out of this hold. I think it did 2 separate holds, and it finally arrived. I think it arrived at I think 6 or so, 6:15, somewhere in that area. So already 2 hours behind the scheduled departure time. Well, luckily enough here, my Southwest flight from New Orleans to St. Louis also got delayed, this time by an hour. Keep in mind that is the layover time that I had from St. Louis to Tulsa. That will prove powerful in the future. That's your little hint. Anyways, so from that point, I was like, who knows? Maybe there's a chance. I didn't have much confidence. I was sure that I was going to be getting my first hotel by myself for the first time. And I was like, I thought 3 hours would be enough, but you know, it's really proven powerful on Frontier, which is probably regarded as the worst US carrier out there. I had a great experience on Spirit the flight before, not just for it being on time, but also just the crews and the gate agents and so on. So feel free to check out that video as well. But nevertheless, our Frontier flight finally arrived, and I had to deal with some rather rude gate agents, which was rather disappointing. They had several conflicts with various passengers. I'm sure these gate agents were already a little bit fatigued from dealing with all the problems that the storm caused at Orlando, but it was still no excuse to act the way that they did. This also just isn't a one-off experience from my experience. I've seen many rude gate agents, customer service representatives, and even flight attendants videos online from both Frontier and Spirit, but especially Frontier, and I don't know why, but especially at Denver. So I certainly kept those in the back of my head when going through this process, and of course I just handled it the best I could. All I wanted was a printed boarding pass as well, which was quite impressive because again, I'm traveling with my camera bag, which is the personal item, and easily fit within the size of all these low-cost carriers. So all of that side of this is fine at the moment. But anyways, I did get a printed boarding pass, luckily with no issues throughout there. So that was nice. And I'm trying to think of where I wanted to take this from here. So yeah, I got the printed boarding pass and we were already 3.5 hours delayed. And yes, so I ended up boarding the Frontier flight because again, I would have got a better deal in New Orleans on a hotel anyways with my logic, and my American Airlines itinerary was delayed from there and so on. So at this point, I was just like, if I can make it to New Orleans, that gets me a step closer, a little bit money saved. I don't have to forfeit the Frontier ticket. I still wanted to fly them, see what the experience was like. Luckily, the cabin crew was good, as we'll see in that trip report. But nevertheless, I was like, what more can I do at this point to try to get myself out of this situation? And that is exactly where I'm going to leave off part one of Did I Make My Connection? And for part one, yes, I did successfully make my connection in Orlando International Airport after landing at 11:27 a.m. Eastern time, and we departed at 7:13 p.m. Eastern time. So you'll have to stay on the lookout for that trip report so you can see how the flight went. Now keep in mind, for this delayed Southwest flight from New Orleans to St. Louis, Frontier doesn't have Wi-Fi, period. I would have been beyond delighted to buy Frontier Wi-Fi to figure out whether I was going to be able to make this flight or not. But it was kind of honestly just a blessing in disguise at this point because I didn't have to worry about it. I was off for New Orleans. I can enjoy the flight, which had some tremendous views, by the way. It was super fun. And when we land, we'll figure out then whether we're going to be making it one step farther in this process or not. So that's exactly where I'm going to leave you. Be sure to stay on the lookout for the upcoming trip report for Frontier A321 from Orlando to New Orleans. And then we'll have part two of the series because we did successfully make it to part two. If I do make my connection or not in New Orleans, which you'll have to stay on the lookout whether that happens or not. Spoiler alert, you're not going to want to miss it. So I'm looking very forward to sharing that with you all, but nevertheless, stay on the lookout for the trip report, and then we'll have that video to see whether we're able to make this delayed Southwest flight or not, because it was quite the story. So I really hope you all are enjoying this little mini video series inside of my real life content. I thought it would be really fun to kind of break this down and talk about it and, you know, go into the full details on it. Again, this will be the longest episode of this mini series for this trip. However, if I find more situations where I can talk about, you know, kind of mini story times, even if you will, inside these videos, I absolutely will. So if you have any recommendations, feel free to let me know, but you'll have to stay tuned to see whether I make my Southwest flight in New Orleans or not. I'm looking very forward to seeing if we do, and I hope each and every one of you are as well. But nevertheless, that'll do it for today's video, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. I want to thank each and every one of you for watching. My name is Redriveraviation. Take it easy, everybody. Stay safe. Trust the process. Do you love and love you do. My name is Redriveraviation. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all soon as Redriveraviation is signing off.